The five-star restaurant gleamed under crystal chandeliers, mocking laughter echoing across the banquet table. A young woman in an elegant evening gown hung her head low, trembling hands clasped together. The man in a simple work shirt with calloused hands, weathered by labor, calmly placed a glass of water on the polished table. He looked up, his voice deep and steady yet commanding. "She's with me." The entire table froze. At the head sat a young woman with softly curled blonde hair and ice-cold eyes motionless. The silver necklace gleaming on her chest trembled slightly with her rapid breathing. It was the moment that brought the entire room to a standstill. 12 hours earlier, Ryan Hayes stood in his modest apartment kitchen making breakfast for his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. At 35, his hands told the story of a working man, calloused from years of fixing air conditioners and refrigeration units. The morning sun filtered through their small window, illuminating a simple life built on love and hard work. Ryan woke at 5:30 a.m., a full 30 minutes before his alarm would sound, an old habit from his days as a firefighter that he couldn't shake. He moved quietly through the apartment, his stockinged feet making no sound on the worn hardwood floors. In the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face and studied his reflection. The scar along his right temple had faded to a thin white line, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. His eyes still sharp despite the years performed their morning ritual, checking the smoke detector, light, the window locks, the clear path to Lily's room. 1, 2, 3 checks. Always 3. In the kitchen, he opened the refrigerator, his eyes lingering on 2 photographs magnetized to the door. The first showed Lily at her kindergarten graduation, missing her 2 front teeth and beaming with pride. The second, tucked slightly behind it, captured the twisted remains of a car half submerged in churning water. Ryan's fingers brushed unconsciously against the raised scar tissue that ran from his elbow to his shoulder. The physical reminder of a night 15 years ago when he'd pulled 2 strangers from a sinking vehicle during a thunderstorm. He'd never learned their names, not properly. Just a signature in a small leather notebook he always carried in his breast pocket. To Ryan Hayes, the man I owe my life to, Jackson Richards. Ryan's lips moved silently as they did each morning. 15 years now, old friend. I wonder how your little girl turned out. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway broke his reverie. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her brown hair a tangled mess around her face. Ryan's entire demeanor softened at the sight of her. Every hardened edge from his years of fighting fires and the struggles that followed melted away when he looked at his daughter. Lily climbed onto the stool at their small kitchen counter, watching as her father cracked eggs into a bowl. She had her mother's eyes, perceptive, taking in everything, but thankfully little else from the woman who'd decided parenthood wasn't her calling and left when Lily was barely 2. Ryan had never spoken ill of his ex-wife to their daughter. He simply filled the roles of both parents as best he could, his large, capable hands learning to braid hair and sew costume patches with the same precision he used to repair complex HVAC systems. Lily grabbed her sketchbook from the counter, flipping through pages filled with colorful drawings. Most children her age drew stick figures, but Lily's artistic talent already showed remarkable promise. Ryan had pinched pennies to buy her proper colored pencils last Christmas, the sacrifice worth every gleam of delight in her eyes. Ryan set a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her. Lily immediately picked up her fork but paused before taking a bite, her eyes serious. "I don't need a mom at school like the other kids, Daddy. I have you, and you're worth both a mom and dad put together." Ryan's throat tightened, his hand automatically reaching to tousle her already wild hair. He hadn't expected the comment, and it landed square in the center of his perpetual worry that he wasn't enough for her. "Eat your breakfast, princess. We've got a busy day ahead." Lily nodded, digging into her eggs while Ryan poured himself coffee. He didn't take sugar, couldn't afford it most months anyway, but the ritual of morning coffee grounded him. As he sipped the bitter brew, he watched Lily flip to a new page in her sketchbook and begin drawing with intent focus. "What are you working on there, Lil?" Without looking up, her small hand moving with confident strokes across the page. "It's us, you, me, and someone who makes you smile." Ryan glanced at the drawing. 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow, him recognizable by the tool belt she always added to his hip. Lily with exaggeratedly long hair she desperately wanted in real life. And a third figure, a woman with no distinct features except a necklace drawn around her neck. Ryan swallowed hard. Lily often drew this mysterious third person in their family portraits. He'd asked her once who it was supposed to be, and her answer had stunned him. "I don't know yet, but she's coming." He turned away, busying himself with washing the frying pan to hide the emotion that threatened to spill over. As a firefighter, he'd run into burning buildings without hesitation, but the innocent hope in his daughter's drawings terrified him. She deserved so much more than he could give her. A full family of bigger home opportunities he struggled to provide on a technician's salary. The flash of memory came unbidden, flames engulfing a suburban home, his team arriving too late. The sound of a child screaming from an upstairs window. His desperate climb up the ladder, the roof giving way, just as his fingers brushed against a small hand. The crushing weight as the ceiling collapsed, burying him and the child he'd failed to save. The months of physical therapy, the nightmares, the honorable discharge from the department when his PTSD made returning impossible. Ryan shook his head, forcing the memory back into its compartment. There were people you couldn't save and people you couldn't forget saving. Both haunted him equally. He dried his hands and touched the notebook in his pocket, a habit when anxiety threatened. After leaving the fire department, he'd rebuilt his life around practical skills. The HVAC certification program had been his lifeline. Tangible problems with concrete solutions. Systems that broke in predictable ways and could be fixed with the right tools and knowledge. Unlike people. Unlike himself. "Lily, time to brush your teeth and get dressed. Remember, we wear clean jeans today, not the ones with the hole in the knee." She rolled her eyes in exaggerated exasperation but slid off the stool with a smile. "Daddy, I know. I'm 7, not a baby." As she disappeared down the hallway, Ryan allowed himself exactly 5 seconds of bone-deep exhaustion before straightening his shoulders and preparing for the day ahead. Across the city, Leonore Richards stood in her glass-walled office on the 42nd floor of the Richards Enterprise headquarters. At 27, she was the youngest billionaire heiress to ever run the technology empire her father had built from nothing. The morning light reflected off the surrounding skyscrapers, creating prisms across the polished, concrete floor of her minimalist workspace. Eleanor's ice-blue eyes scanned contracts with mechanical precision as her fingers absently touched the silver locket at her throat. Her one concession to sentimentality in an otherwise ruthlessly efficient life. She never removed it, not even to shower or sleep. The cleaning staff whispered that she'd fired an assistant who had once suggested she take it off for a photo shoot. Sarah Williams knocked softly before entering, a stack of folders clutched to her chest. At 25, Sarah was everything Eleanor was not. Warm, expressive from a modest background she never tried to hide. Her simple dress was well made, but clearly off the rack. Her one splurge, the sensible yet stylish pumps she'd saved 3 paychecks to afford. Ms. Richards, the Evergreen restaurant, confirms everything is ready for tonight's banquet. I've triple-checked the seating arrangements as you requested. Eleanor nodded without looking up, her attention still on the contract before her. Tonight's dinner would seal the biggest international deal in company history, a $3 billion partnership with investors from 4 continents. She'd spent 2 years laying the groundwork for this merger, calculating every variable, anticipating every objection. Trust is a luxury people like me cannot afford, Sarah. The comment seemed to come from nowhere, startling Sarah, who had been arranging the day's schedule on her tablet. Eleanor finally looked up, her expression unreadable as always, but something vulnerable flickered briefly in her eyes. Just as quickly, it disappeared behind the mask of cool competence she wore like armor. Sarah knew better than to acknowledge the rare moment of personal disclosure. In the 18 months she'd worked as Eleanor's executive assistant, she'd learned to navigate her boss's precise boundaries. Eleanor Richards was brilliant, fair, and occasionally even kind, but never personal, never warm. The company gossip painted her as an ice queen, but Sarah had glimpsed something else beneath the surface, a profound loneliness that Eleanor herself might not even recognize. Eleanor turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the San Francisco skyline. Her reflection stared back. Tailored black suit, blonde hair pulled into a sleek chignon, not a strand out of place. Perfect posture, perfect composure. The silver locket caught the light, drawing the eye despite its simple design. Have the final prospectus sent to all attendees by noon, and Sarah makes sure Marcus Blackwell's accommodations include the specific mineral water his office requested. He's looking for any excuse to back out. Sarah nodded, making a note. Marcus Blackwell was notorious in investment circles, Brilliant but capricious, with a reputation for using trivial dissatisfactions as negotiation leverage. At 62, the London-based financier had built his own empire through ruthless efficiency and an uncanny ability to identify weakness. His support was crucial for tonight's deal, but his public disdain for what he called entitled tech aristocracy made him unpredictable where Eleanor was concerned. What few people knew was that Marcus Blackwell hadn't always been so cynical. 10 years ago, his business partner and closest friend had betrayed him, stealing both significant company assets and his wife in one devastating blow. The scandal had cost Marcus half his fortune and all of his trust. Now he measured people solely by their pedigree and polish, discarding anyone who didn't meet his exacting standards of sophistication. Eleanor had prepared extensively for every question he might ask tonight, every subtle challenge to her authority he might issue. At 27, she constantly had to prove herself worthy of the Richards name, and Marcus Blackwell would be her most formidable test yet. The phone on Eleanor's desk buzzed. She pressed the speaker button, her voice instantly shifting to its business cadence. "This is Richards. Ms. Richards, the Evergreen restaurant manager, is on line 1. There's an issue with the climate control system." Eleanor's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "I don't care what it costs. Fix it now." She ended the call with a sharp tap. The Evergreen was San Francisco's most exclusive restaurant, boasting 3 Michelin stars and a 6-month waiting list. Eleanor had reserved the entire establishment for tonight's dinner, sparing no expense. A malfunctioning climate system threatened everything. Comfort was a basic prerequisite for the kind of high-level negotiations she had planned. As she turned back to the contracts, Eleanor felt a strange sensation, a heaviness in her chest, an inexplicable foreboding. Her hand moved to the silver locket fingers, tracing its familiar contours. Inside was a photograph so small most people wouldn't be able to make out its details. A 12-year-old Eleanor and her father, both with bandages and bruises taken shortly after the accident that had nearly claimed their lives. "Father, I feel something coming tonight." She spoke the words silently, a habit she'd developed in the 5 years since Jackson Richards had succumbed to a heart attack at his desk, leaving his only child to carry on his legacy. Sometimes she imagined he could still hear her, still guide her through the complex world he'd built and entrusted to her far too early. Sarah cleared her throat, softly breaking the moment. "I've confirmed the HVAC repair technician is on his way to the Evergreen. They're sending their best." Eleanor nodded, already refocusing on the task at hand. The strange feeling lingered, but she pushed it aside. She didn't believe in premonitions or fate. Life had taught her that success came from preparation, not superstition. Whatever problems arose, she would solve them as she always did, with calculation, composure, and control. Ryan's phone rang just as he finished packing his tool bag for the day's scheduled maintenance calls. The screen showed Kendall Services, the HVAC company that had taken a chance on him after his physical therapy when his credentials were solid but his confidence was shattered. "Hayes here." "Ryan, thank God. We've got an emergency at the Evergreen restaurant. Their entire climate control system is down and they've got some major event tonight. They're offering triple the emergency rate if you can get there within the hour." Ryan glanced at the clock. His first appointment wasn't for another 90 minutes, and the Evergreen was only a 20-minute drive. He mentally rearranged his schedule, calculating how many hours of overtime it would take to cover Lily's upcoming school field trip fees. "I'm on my way. Tell them I'll be there in 30. He ended the call and looked up to find Lily standing in the doorway, her backpack already on, watching him with those observant eyes that missed nothing. "You got the worried line between your eyebrows, Daddy." Ryan smoothed his expression, amazed as always by her perceptiveness. "Big job came up, Lil. I'll drop you at school soon." The phone rang again. Ryan answered to hear the strained voice of Lily's teacher explaining she had come down with a stomach bug and the school would be closed for the day. The backup plan, Lily staying with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel, fell apart with the next call. Mrs. Patel had a doctor's appointment she couldn't miss. Ryan ran a hand through his short, dark hair, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest when life's logistics threatened to unravel. The Evergreen job was too important to turn down. It would cover not just the field trip, but maybe even the new winter coat Lily needed. But he had nowhere for her to go. "Looks like you're coming with me today, kiddo." Lily's face lit up. She loved accompanying her father on jobs, sitting quietly with her sketchbook, while he worked occasionally handing him tools and absorbing his patient explanations of mechanical systems like a sponge. Ryan had discovered that his daughter had not only inherited her mother's artistic talent, but his own mechanical aptitude, a combination that filled him with quiet pride. As they headed to his truck, a 12-year-old model he maintained with meticulous care, Ryan felt a familiar pang of guilt. A proper father would have childcare backup plans. A successful father wouldn't have to bring his daughter to work sites. But Lily never complained, never compared their life to the more comfortable existences of her classmates. Lily, I know this isn't how you wanted to spend your day, but sometimes we have to adapt. Like water pipes. When there's pressure, we don't break, we just find a new way to flow. Lily buckled her seatbelt, her expression serious as she considered his words. I understand, Daddy. You're a superhero in a plumber's suit. Ryan chuckled, starting the engine. He wasn't a plumber, and he certainly wasn't a hero, not anymore. But Lily's unwavering faith in him was the one constant that kept him going through the lean months and lonely nights. As they drove through the San Francisco morning traffic, Ryan explained that the Evergreen was a very fancy restaurant where very important people ate very expensive food. His tone was matter-of-fact, neither resentful nor impressed by the wealth they were about to encounter. Remember our rule when we go into other people's spaces? Lily recited without hesitation. Respect, politeness, and leave it cleaner than we found it. Ryan nodded, his chest swelling with quiet pride. He might not be able to give his daughter material advantages, but he was teaching her values that would serve her long after the latest trends and toys had been forgotten. They pulled into the service area behind the Evergreen parking between a delivery van and a luxury car that probably cost more than Ryan would earn in 5 years. He grabbed his tool bag and Lily's backpack, which contained her sketchbook, colored pencils, and the sandwich he'd packed for her lunch. The restaurant manager met them at the service entrance, his forehead beaded with sweat despite the cool morning. Voices carrying the unmistakable cadence of wealth and entitlement drifted from the main dining room. Early arrivals for some breakfast, meeting no doubt. Thank God you're here. The entire system shut down an hour ago. We've got the most important dinner of the year tonight. Richard's Enterprises booked the entire restaurant. Ryan nodded, already mentally cataloging the possible failure points in a system of the Evergreen's size and complexity. He knew the Richards name, of course. Everyone in San Francisco did. The technology company was the T's largest employer and had transformed the skyline with its gleaming headquarters. I'll need access to your mechanical room and the rooftop units. My daughter will sit quietly out of the way while I work. The manager's eyes flicked to Lily with poorly disguised dismay, but nodded tightly. Just keep her out of sight of the guests, please. And you'll both need to use the service corridors. The main dining room is being prepared for tonight. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly at the man's tone, but he simply nodded. He was here to do a job, get paid, and leave. The opinions of people who looked at Lily and saw an inconvenience rather than the extraordinary child she was didn't matter. As they moved through the kitchen, the contrast between the gleaming front of house and the utilitarian back areas was stark. The kitchen staff worked with focused intensity, barely glancing up as Ryan and Lily passed. This was another world with its own hierarchy and rules, and Ryan moved through it with the quiet confidence of a man who understood systems, mechanical and social alike. They had to cross a corner of the main dining room to reach the mechanical closet. As they walked, heads turned. A table of well-dressed men and women paused their conversation, watching the pair with undisguised curiosity. Ryan in his work clothes, tool bag in hand. Lily with her colorful backpack and bright eyes taking in every detail of the opulent space. One man in an expensive suit looked up from his mimosa, his British accent carrying clearly across the room. Excuse me, I think you're sitting in the wrong section. The table erupted in laughter. Ryan kept walking, but Lily stopped, her small shoulders squaring. Daddy, they're wrong, Ryan turned gently, taking her hand. It's okay, sweetheart. The man persisted, his voice dripping with amusement. This is a 5-star establishment. I'm sure there's a McDonald's down the street that would be more appropriate. More laughter rippled through the room. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he continued walking, guiding Lily toward the service corridor. As they passed the main dining area, a young woman in a modest dress stumbled as a server accidentally bumped into her, spilling red wine across her outfit. Ryan recognized her as Sarah Williams, Eleanor Richards' assistant from a recent profile in the business section of the newspaper. The same group of patrons watched as Sarah frantically tried to clean the stain, her face flushed with embarrassment. How mortifying, one woman commented loudly. Someone like that doesn't belong at a table like this anyway. Cruel laughter filled the air. The assistant's hands trembled as she dabbed helplessly at the spreading stain. Ryan paused, his eyes flashing with something cold and sharp for just a moment. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, but he said nothing, simply continued on his way, Lily's small hand in his. Once in the corridor, Lily looked up at him with troubled eyes. "Why are they being mean?" "Daddy," Ryan crouched down to her level, choosing his words carefully. "Some people forget what really matters, Lil. They think nice clothes and expensive restaurants make them important. But real importance comes from how you treat others, especially people you think can't do anything for you." His hand instinctively touched the small notebook in his pocket, the tangible reminder of a night when he'd acted without calculation, without thought of reward. A night that had changed the course of at least 3 lives. The mechanical room was exactly as Ryan expected. State-of-the-art equipment maintained with more concern for appearance than function. He set Lily up in the corner with her sketchbook and a small folding stool he always carried in his tool bag for her. "This might take a while, Princess." "You okay here?" Lily nodded, already opening to a fresh page. "I'm going to draw the restaurant with all the fancy lights." Ryan smiled, then turned his attention to the complex HVAC system that served the Evergreen. Within minutes, he'd identified the primary issue, a failed compressor control board, but his experienced eyes caught several other problems that would lead to catastrophic failure if not addressed soon. The entire system had been installed for aesthetics rather than efficiency, prioritizing silent operation over practical access for maintenance. As he worked, Ryan's mind kept returning to the young assistant with the wine-stained dress. He'd seen that look of humiliation before, had felt it himself when he'd first started bringing Lily to job sites and encountered clients who made their disdain clear. The urge to intervene had been strong, but experience had taught him that in spaces like the Evergreen, people like him were invisible until they caused problems. After 2 hours of intensive work, Ryan had replaced the control board and recalibrated the system. The air was flowing again, but his thorough inspection revealed a potential refrigerant leak in one of the rooftop units, a problem that wouldn't be apparent now but could cause complete system failure under the stress of a full restaurant on a warm evening. He found the manager explaining the situation in clear technical terms. "The system is running now, but there's a secondary issue that needs attention before tonight. I'll need to come back this evening to make sure everything stays stable during peak load." The manager frowned, clearly unhappy with the news, but unwilling to risk a climate failure during the Richards event. "Fine, but you'll need to be discreet. Use the service entrance and stay out of sight of the guests." Ryan nodded, used to the dismissive tone. "I'll be back at 7 to check the system during dinner service. And you should schedule a complete overhaul of the rooftop units within the next month. They're showing signs of stress that will only get worse." As he collected Lily and their belongings, Ryan took a different route through the restaurant, deliberately avoiding the dining room where the unpleasant encounter had occurred. They passed through a hallway lined with photographs. Local celebrities, politicians, and business leaders who had dined at the Evergreen over its 15-year history. One photograph caught Ryan's attention, stopping him mid-stride. It showed Eleanor Richards accepting some award, the restaurant's distinctive chandeliers gleaming in the background. She wore an elegant black dress, her blonde hair swept up, her posture regal. But it was the silver locket around her neck that made Ryan's breath catch. He moved closer, studying the image. The woman was stunning, certainly, but it was something about her eyes, ice blue and somehow familiar, that stirred a memory he couldn't quite grasp. The silver locket captured in the photograph was simple, seemingly at odds with the obvious wealth of its wearer. "Daddy, who is that lady?" Ryan turned to find Lily staring at the same photograph, her head tilted in curiosity. "That's Eleanor Richards. She runs a very big company." Lily continued to stare, unusually transfixed. "She's pretty, but sad inside, like she lost something important." Ryan looked at his daughter in surprise. The photograph showed Eleanor Richards smiling politely at the camera. Nothing in her expression suggested sadness. Yet Lily had always possessed an uncanny ability to read people, to see past facades that most adults missed completely. As they left through the service entrance, Ryan felt a strange sense of unease. The encounter with the rude patrons, the assistant's humiliation, the photograph of Eleanor Richards with her hauntingly familiar eyes. All of it left him with the sense that he'd glimpsed the edge of something significant, like the first rumble before an avalanche. Lily chattered happily as they drove to Ryan's next job, a routine maintenance call at an apartment complex. He answered her questions automatically, his mind still caught on the silver locket in the photograph. He'd seen something like it before but couldn't place where or when. The rest of the day passed in a blur of service calls, a stuck thermostat in a retirement home, a refrigerant recharge at a small grocery store, a condenser fan replacement at an office building. Routine problems with straightforward solutions. The kind of work Ryan excelled at, where his attention to detail and methodical approach made him the company's most requested technician. At 5:30, he called his boss to explain the situation at the Evergreen. "I need to go back tonight to monitor the system during peak load. I'm bringing Lily. I don't have anyone to watch her." His boss sighed but didn't object. Ryan was too valuable to alienate, especially with commercial clients who specifically requested him by name. "Just make sure she stays out of sight. The Evergreen people are particular about their image." Ryan glanced at Lily, who had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her sketchbook open on her lap to a half-finished drawing. The page showed the beginning of a woman's face with special attention given to a necklace around her throat. Even in the rough sketch, Ryan recognized Eleanor Richards from the photograph. As he drove back toward the Evergreen, Ryan realized that in their hasty departure that morning, Lily had left behind her favorite colored pencil case. It wasn't a crisis, she had other supplies. But the small leather pouch had been a birthday gift from Mrs. Patel, and Lily treasured it. Another minor complication in a day full of them. Ryan would need to ask the restaurant staff if they'd found it, adding one more interaction where he'd be treated as an inconvenience rather than a skilled professional solving a critical problem. The evening sun cast long shadows as they pulled into the Evergreen service area again. The parking lot was now filled with luxury vehicles, sleek European sedans, and high-end SUVs with tinted windows. A line of town cars waited at the main entrance, drivers standing at attention as elegantly dressed guests emerged. Ryan parked in the same spot as before, gently waking Lily. "Time for round two, kiddo. Remember, we need to be extra quiet and stay out of the way tonight. Very important people are having dinner here." Lily rubbed her eyes, immediately alert in the way only children can be after waking. "Did you bring my book? I want to finish my drawing." Ryan handed her the backpack with her spare supplies, watching as she frowned at the absence of her special pencil case. "I think you left it here this morning. We'll ask if someone found it, okay?" They entered through the service entrance, the kitchen now a whirlwind of activity. Chefs called orders in sharp, precise language, while servers moved with choreographed efficiency between stations. No one paid any attention to the HVAC technician and his daughter slipping through to the mechanical room. The system was functioning, but Ryan's experienced ear caught the slight strain in the compressor. It was working harder than it should be. He set Lily up in her corner spot, then began a thorough check of the readings, confirming his suspicion that the refrigerant leak was worse than he initially thought. The system would hold through the evening, but barely. "Lily, I need to check the rooftop unit. Stay right here, okay? Don't move from this spot." Lily nodded solemnly, already absorbed in her drawing. Ryan hesitated, his parental instinct warring with professional necessity. The rooftop check would take 15 minutes, 20 at most. Lily had stayed put in similar situations countless times before. She knew the rules. Stay seated, don't touch anything. Find a staff member if there's an emergency. Still, something made him pause. Maybe it was the encounter that morning, or the strange sense of significance that had followed him all day. "Don't go exploring, Lil. Promise me." Lily looked up, recognizing the serious tone. "I promise, Daddy." Satisfied, Ryan headed for the service elevator that would take him to the roof. As the doors closed, separating him from his daughter, that sense of unease returned stronger than before. On the rooftop, the sunset painted the San Francisco skyline in brilliant oranges and pinks. In another life, Ryan might have paused to appreciate the view, but his focus was entirely on the massive HVAC unit that served the Evergreen's main dining room. His inspection confirmed his fears. The leak was significant, and the system was straining to compensate. He worked quickly, applying a temporary fix that would get the restaurant through the evening. Tomorrow, he would submit a formal recommendation for a complete system overhaul with a quote that would make the manager blanch, but was entirely justified given the equipment's condition. Meanwhile, Lily sat in the mechanical room, diligently working on her drawing of Eleanor Richards. The woman's face took shape under her careful hand. The high cheekbones, the serious eyes, the slight tension around the mouth that suggested she rarely smiled with genuine feeling. Lily paid special attention to the silver locket, though she couldn't say why it seemed so important. After a few minutes, she realized she was thirsty. She looked around the small mechanical room, but saw no water fountain. Her father had been very clear about staying put, but surely getting a drink would be okay. The kitchen had been full of people. Someone there could help her. Decision made, Lily carefully set down her sketchbook and slipped into the hallway. The kitchen was just around the corner, and she'd be back before her father returned from the roof. The sounds of the restaurant guided her. Clinking glasses, murmured conversations, the occasional burst of polite laughter. But Lily took a wrong turn. Instead of finding the kitchen, she found herself at the edge of the main dining room, hidden behind a decorative screen. The space had transformed since morning, now bathed in soft lighting from the crystal chandeliers, tables arranged in a U-shape around a central area where Eleanor Richards stood addressing her guests. Lily froze, transfixed. The woman from the photograph and her drawing was right there, even more striking in person. Eleanor wore a midnight blue evening gown that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her blonde hair was arranged in an elegant twist, her posture perfect as she spoke with quiet authority about market projections and innovation paradigms. And there against the dark fabric of her dress, the silver locket gleamed. Lily couldn't look away. There was something about Eleanor Richards that called to her, some connection she couldn't understand but felt with certainty. In her 7-year-old mind, seeing Eleanor in person confirmed what she had somehow already known. This woman was important. This woman was part of their story, though Lily couldn't have explained how or why. At the table, Sarah Williams sat to Eleanor's right, still wearing the dress with the wine stain, despite her best efforts to clean it. The same group of wealthy patrons from the morning was seated nearby, including the British man who had mocked Ryan. Lily recognized him immediately. Marcus Blackwell, now engaged in what appeared to be serious conversation with Eleanor. "I say," Marcus announced loudly, his British accent cutting through the ambient chatter. "I do hope we're not expecting everyone at this table to maintain the same standards of presentation." All eyes turned towards Sarah, whose face immediately flushed crimson. She instinctively pulled at her dress, trying to hide the faint stains. Some people chimed in. A woman Lily didn't recognize simply weren't born for tables like this. Her laughter was sharp as broken glass. Sarah's hands began to shake. She started to rise from her chair, whispering, "I should go, nonsense." Marcus continued, emboldened by the crowd's reaction. "But perhaps in the future we should establish a dress code. Can't have people in, what is that? A thrift store special." The table exploded in cruel laughter. Several phones appeared ready to capture the humiliation for social media. Sarah's breathing became rapid and shallow tears forming in her eyes. Eleanor watched silently, her expression unreadable. Her fingers moved to the silver locket at her throat, toying with it absently, as she observed the scene unfolding at her carefully planned dinner. Something flickered in her ice-blue eyes. Regret. Indecision. Whatever it was, it passed, quickly replaced by the same cool detachment she always wore in public. Lily felt a surge of indignation on Sarah's behalf. The same feeling she'd had that morning when the patrons had mocked her father. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. Adults were supposed to be kind to each other. That's what her father always taught her. Why didn't Eleanor say something? Why didn't she stop them without conscious thought? Lily stepped out from behind the screen, her small face set in determination. She walked directly to the table, unnoticed at first among the tall chairs and absorbed diners. When she reached Sarah's side, she tugged gently on the woman's sleeve. The conversation died as heads turned to stare at the unexpected child who had materialized beside them. Sarah looked down, surprise momentarily displacing her humiliation. "Are you okay? You look sad." Lily's voice was clear and direct, without the self-consciousness an adult would feel in such a setting. Sarah blinked, caught completely off guard by the genuine concern in the child's eyes. I'm fine, sweetie. Thank you for asking." Marcus Blackwell recovered from his surprise, his expression darkening. "Where did this child come from?" "This is a private event." "Security." Lily didn't flinch under his glare. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a slightly crumpled tissue, offering it to Sarah with solemn dignity. My daddy says when people are mean, it shows who they are, not who you are. The simple wisdom of her words hung in the air. Sarah accepted the tissue, a genuine smile breaking through her distress for the first time that evening. Thank you. Eleanor Richards had not moved, but her eyes were now fixed on Lily with an intensity that seemed to block out everything else in the room. There was something in the child's face, something in her direct gaze that stirred a memory so distant it felt like trying to recall a dream upon waking. The silver locket suddenly felt heavy against her skin. Without thinking, Eleanor opened it, glancing down at the tiny photograph inside. Herself at 12 beside her father, both bearing the marks of their near-fatal accident. The image that had guided her for 15 years, reminding her of what they'd survived and what they'd lost. Little girl, who are you? Eleanor's voice was softer than anyone at the table had ever heard it, the practiced authority temporarily set aside. Before Lily could answer, a commotion at the entrance to the dining room drew everyone's attention. Ryan Hayes appeared, his face tight with worry, as he scanned the room for his daughter. When he spotted her standing beside Sarah at the main table, a complex mix of emotions crossed his features. Relief, embarrassment, and a flash of that same protective anger he'd suppressed that morning. He crossed the room with long strides, every eye following his progress. In his work clothes tool belt still attached to his waist, he stood out starkly against the formal attire of the dinner guests. Yet something in his bearing, a quiet dignity and unshakable self-possession, made him impossible to dismiss. Lily, what are you doing? I told you to stay in the mechanical room. His voice was low, but carried in the now silent dining room. Lily looked up at her father, not cowed, but earnest. The lady was sad, Daddy. They were being mean to her like they were mean to you. Ryan placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder, his eyes meeting Sarah's briefly. I apologize for the interruption. My daughter sometimes, she feels things strongly. Sarah shook her head, still holding the tissue Lily had given her. No apology needed. She was being kind when others weren't. Marcus Blackwell pushed back his chair, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. I don't know who you think you are, maintenance man, but this is a private business dinner. Take your child and leave immediately. Ryan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. We're going. I just came to collect my daughter. He turned to lead Lily away, but she resisted, looking back at the table with determination beyond her years. That's not how you talk to my daddy. He fixes things you can't even understand. He saves people. The simple, fierce loyalty in her declaration hung in the air. Eleanor Richards hadn't moved, her eyes still fixed on Ryan with that same unsettling intensity. The silver locket lay open in her palm, the photograph inside visible only to her. Lily continued, unstoppable now. My daddy was a firefighter. He ran into burning buildings and saved people. Then he got hurt, saving a family from water. Now he fixes air things, but he's still a hero. Ryan knelt beside Lily, his voice gentle but firm. That's enough, Lil. These people have important business to discuss. Marcus Blackwell gave a dismissive laugh. Yes, listen to your father, little girl. The adults have a multi-billion-dollar deal to finalize. Perhaps Daddy can explain what that means while he's fixing toilets, or whatever it is he does. The cruel comment landed like a physical blow. Ryan straightened to his full height, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. For a moment, the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried a weight that silenced even Marcus Blackwell. I teach my daughter that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or job title, Mr. Blackwell. I teach her to be kind, especially to those who can't do anything for her. What are you teaching with your example right now? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Marcus's face flushed dark red, but for once he found himself without a cutting retort. In the sudden silence, the sound of Eleanor's chair scraping back seemed unnaturally loud. She stood, the silver locket still open in her hand, her eyes never leaving Ryan's face. Your name, please tell me your name. Ryan met her gaze with equal intensity, something like recognition flickering across his features. Ryan Hayes. The name hit Eleanor like a physical force. Her hand flew to her throat, gripping the silver locket so tightly her knuckles turned white. Ryan Hayes, the name her father had spent years searching for. The name of the man who had pulled them from the sinking car during that terrible storm 15 years ago. The man they had never been able to properly thank. Is it really you? Eleanor's voice had lost all its practiced authority, reduced to something young and uncertain. Were you there that night? The storm, the bridge, the car in the water. Ryan stood perfectly still, but Lily could feel the sudden tension in her father's body. His hand went to his breast pocket, to the small leather notebook he always carried. I was. But how did you... Eleanor cut him off, her words tumbling out with uncharacteristic urgency. You pulled us out. Me and my father, Jackson Richards. The car went off the bridge during the storm. You dove in. You saved us. Then you disappeared from the hospital before we could thank you. The entire table watched in stunned silence as the composed, controlled Eleanor Richards transformed before their eyes. Her carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing the vulnerable human beneath. A woman who had carried a debt of gratitude for 15 years with no way to repay it. Ryan slowly withdrew the small leather notebook from his pocket. With deliberate movements, he opened it to the first page and held it up for Eleanor to see. The handwriting was unmistakable to her. Her father's bold, confident script, "To Ryan Hayes, the man I owe my life to, Jackson Richards." Eleanor's legs gave out and she collapsed back into her chair, color draining from her face. Oh my God, it's really you. We looked for you for so long. Dad hired private investigators. He wanted to thank you properly to help you somehow. Ryan's expression softened with something like wonder. I was in a coma for 2 weeks after that night. By the time I woke up, you were gone. The only thing I had was this notebook with your father's signature. I tried to find you too, but Richards is a common name and I didn't know your first name or what you look like. Eleanor touched the silver locket again, this time with reverence rather than anxiety. Dad gave me this the day I turned 16. He said it would help me recognize the man who saved us if I ever found him. He said I would know you by your eyes, eyes that had seen darkness but chose to bring light. As if pulled by an invisible force, Lily stepped forward, her small hand reaching toward Eleanor's locket. Can I see? Before anyone could object, Eleanor leaned down, holding the open locket, where Lily could see the small photograph inside. The child studied it intently, then looked up with a smile of pure delight. I knew it. I saw you in my dream. You were in the water, and Daddy was pulling you out. Ryan stared at his daughter in astonishment. Lily had been born years after the accident. There was no way she could know about that night, no way she could have seen photographs of it. Yet the conviction in her voice was absolute. Eleanor looked from the child to Ryan, something like hope dawning in her ice blue eyes. For 5 years, I've run my father's company, built on his vision, protected his legacy. But the one promise I couldn't fulfill was finding you. He made me swear that if I ever did, I would make sure you knew how grateful we were. Marcus Blackwell, who had been watching the scene unfold with growing disbelief, found his voice again. This is incredible. Do you mean to say that this maintenance man saved the founder of Richards Enterprises? Saved the man who built this company from nothing? Saved me. Eleanor finished, her voice regaining some of its strength. The revelation hit the table like a thunderbolt. Phones appeared again, but this time to capture something miraculous rather than cruel. The same people who had mocked Ryan hours earlier now stared at him with a mixture of awe and shame. Victoria Chen was the first to stand, her voice small and mortified. Mr. Hayes, we had no idea. Please accept my deepest apologies. One by one, the other guests began to rise, murmuring similar sentiments. Sarah looked up at Ryan with tears of gratitude streaming down her face. But Ryan's attention was elsewhere. On Eleanor Richards, whose world had just shifted on its axis, and on Lily, who was now tugging at his sleeve with insistent urgency. Daddy, I need to show you something. Ryan crouched down to his daughter's level, aware that every eye in the room was on them, but focusing solely on Lily's earnest face. What is it? Princess Lily pulled her sketchbook from the small backpack she'd been carrying. She flipped it open to the drawing she'd been working on all day. The portrait of Eleanor Richards with the silver locket prominently featured. But it wasn't just the external locket Lily had drawn. Somehow, impossibly, she had sketched the photograph inside as well. The young Eleanor and her father, details no child could have known. I drew this before I saw her for real, Daddy. I saw it in my dream. Ryan stared at the drawing, then at Eleanor, whose own gaze was fixed on the impossible artwork, with an expression of wonder. The skeptic in him searched for a rational explanation. Lily must have glimpsed the open locket, somehow must have seen a photograph somewhere, but he knew it wasn't possible. This was something else, something beyond logical explanation. Eleanor knelt beside them, her expensive gown pooling on the restaurant floor, all concern for appearances forgotten. She gently took the sketchbook, studying the drawing with trembling hands. How did you know? How could you possibly have drawn this? Lily shrugged with the simple acceptance of a child. Some things our hearts know that our heads don't understand. That's what my grandma used to say. The words, so similar to what Ryan's own mother had often told him, sent a shiver down his spine. There were forces at work here beyond his comprehension, connections being forged or perhaps reforged that defied rational explanation. Marcus Blackwell had watched the scene unfold with increasing discomfort. Now he stood gathering his papers with shaking hands. His face burned with shame as he moved toward the exit, his footsteps echoing loudly in the reverent silence. The man who measured worth by pedigree and polish had been humbled by a maintenance worker and a child who saw with her heart instead of her eyes. Lily tugged at Eleanor's sleeve, her expression serious. In my dream, you were sad for a long time, but not anymore. Eleanor looked at the child with wonder, then at Ryan. 15 years of searching, of carrying a debt that could never be repaid, of wondering about the man who had risked everything to save two strangers. And here he was standing before her in worn work clothes with capable hands and eyes that had indeed seen darkness but chosen light. For the first time and longer than she could remember, Eleanor Richards smiled. Not the practiced professional smile she used for business photographs, but a genuine expression that transformed her face and reached her ice blue eyes. Ryan Hayes, I think we have a lot to talk about. The evergreen restaurant transformed from stunned silence to a controlled chaos of whispers and shifting chairs. The distinguished dinner guests moments ago united in cruelty now struggled to process what they'd witnessed. Eleanor Richards, the ice queen of Silicon Valley, kneeling on the floor in her designer gown, holding a child's drawing with trembling hands. The maintenance worker standing tall beside them, his quiet dignity suddenly the most commanding presence in the room. Eleanor rose slowly, brushing imaginary wrinkles from her dress. She turned to address her guests, her voice regaining its professional cadence, though her eyes remained fixed on Ryan and Lily. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest we take a short recess. Please enjoy your appetizers and wine. We'll reconvene for business discussions in 30 minutes. Sarah Williams immediately understood her role, stepping forward to guide the stunned investors toward the bar area. She threw a grateful glance toward Ryan and Lily as she passed, the humiliation of moments ago replaced by something approaching wonder. Eleanor turned back to Ryan, her composure cracking again. There's a private dining room through that door. Could we talk? Please, Ryan hesitated, his protective instinct flaring. The evening had already veered wildly off course and Lily should have been home hours ago, yet something in Eleanor's expression, vulnerability beneath the polish, made refusal impossible. He nodded once, guiding Lily with a gentle hand on her shoulder. The private dining room offered a stark contrast to the opulent main hall, smaller, more intimate, with a round table and plush chairs rather than formal place settings. Eleanor closed the door behind them, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden quiet. For a moment, no one spoke. The billionaire heiress and the maintenance worker studied each other across 15 years of separate lives, connected by one night of rain and courage and luck. Lily broke the silence, climbing onto one of the velvet chairs and opening her sketchbook to a fresh page. I'm going to draw all of us together now. Eleanor watched the child with undisguised fascination. She looks like you around the eyes. Ryan smiled, his first genuine one of the evening. People usually say she takes after her mother. Awkwardness descended again. Eleanor touched her locket, a habit Ryan now recognized as her emotional anchor. How do you begin a conversation 15 years overdue? What words could possibly bridge the gap between their worlds? Eleanor tried first, her voice softer than in the main dining room. After the accident, my father was obsessed with finding you. He hired investigators, posted rewards, searched hospital records. But you had disappeared. Ryan leaned against the wall, the weight of untold history settling between them. I was in rough shape after that night. Hypothermia, broken ribs, shoulder torn up pretty badly. When I woke up from the medically induced coma, there was nothing but your father's note. The hospital had no record of your names, just that I'd pulled two people from a car. Eleanor's professional mask slipped, further revealing genuine regret. We should have stayed. Father wanted to, but his lawyers advised against it. Liability concerns, media attention. He was a public figure even then. They rushed us to a private facility. Ryan absorbed this without visible reaction. He'd long ago accepted that life dealt different cards to different players. His decade-plus wondering about the strangers he'd saved had never included resentment, just curiosity, and occasionally during his darkest days, a wish that they'd found him when he needed help most. The wealthy have different problems, I guess. His tone wasn't accusatory, merely observational. Eleanor flinched slightly anyway. When Father finally tracked down which hospital you'd been taken to, you'd already been discharged with no forwarding address. All we had was your name from the hospital records. Ryan Hayes. Do you know how many Ryan Hayeses there are in California alone? Lily looked up from her drawing, her pencil, pausing mid-stroke. Is that why you wear the necklace, so you could find Daddy someday? The direct question from the child seemed to catch Eleanor off guard. Her hand automatically went to the silver locket, fingers tracing its familiar contours. Yes. My father gave it to me on my 16th birthday. He said if I ever met you, she looked at Ryan, I would recognize you by your eyes, and that I should never take it off until I found you. Ryan's expression softened. He crossed the room and sat across from Eleanor, close enough to speak quietly but maintaining a respectful distance. Well, you've found me. Mystery solved. I'm just a regular guy who happened to be driving across that bridge the same time you went off it. Eleanor shook her head, leaning forward with unusual intensity. No, you don't understand. What you did, it wasn't just pulling strangers from a car. You saved the entire trajectory of Richard's enterprises. You saved thousands of lives, millions in charitable donations, technologies that have changed lives globally. When you pulled my father from that car, you altered the course of an entire industry. Ryan shifted uncomfortably under the weight of significance she placed on his actions. I was a firefighter back then. It was my job to save people. But you weren't on duty, and the official report said conditions were too dangerous for rescue. You went in anyway. Ryan glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in her drawing again, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. He lowered his voice. Some choices you don't think about. You just make them. The door opened, interrupting their conversation. Sarah entered with 3 bottles of water on a small tray, her professional efficiency returning, though her eyes still held that spark of gratitude when she looked at Ryan. Ms. Richards, the investors are getting restless. Mr. Blackwell has left the building, but the others are willing to continue discussions. Should I tell him you'll be another 10 minutes? Eleanor hesitated, visibly torn between obligation and opportunity. The business deal she'd spent 2 years cultivating hung in the balance, yet the man she'd searched for over a decade sat before her. Ryan made the decision for her, standing up and straightening his tool belt. You should get back to your dinner. Those people are here for you, not me. I've got a system to monitor anyway. That's what I actually came here to do tonight. Eleanor's disappointment was visible, a crack in her usually flawless professional veneer. But you'll stay. After the dinner, perhaps we could continue our conversation. There's so much more to say. Ryan glanced at his watch, then at Lily, who had looked up with interest. It's already past her bedtime. Another night, maybe. Eleanor nodded, accepting the boundary, but clearly reluctant. She reached into her clutch bag and withdrew a business card made of heavy stock paper, offering it to Ryan. My private number is on the back. Not my assistant's, not my office. Me. Please call anytime. Ryan took the card, tucking it into his breast pocket next to the leather notebook. I will. And congratulations on your business deal. Sounds important. Eleanor's smile held a hint of irony. Not as important as I thought 3 hours ago. As Ryan and Lily moved toward the door, Eleanor turned to Sarah. Would you show them back to the mechanical room and make sure Mr. Hayes has everything he needs to complete his work? The maintenance man, who'd become the center of an emotional revelation, was once again being relegated to service corridors and hidden spaces. But there was a new note of respect in Eleanor's voice that transformed the request from dismissal to consideration. Ryan noticed the difference and acknowledged it with a slight nod as he guided Lily from the room. As they followed Sarah through the kitchen, Ryan felt the weight of Eleanor's business card in his pocket, heavier than its physical presence warranted. 15 years of wondering, and now he had a direct line to the woman he'd pulled from that sinking car. The child he'd saved had grown into one of the most powerful people in the technology world. It was too much to process while he still had a job to complete. The HVAC system had stabilized with his earlier repairs, but Ryan's trained ear caught the subtle strain in the compressor as he entered the mechanical room. The temporary fix was holding, but barely. The system would need a complete overhaul, soon an expensive proposition the restaurant manager would likely resist until catastrophic failure forced the issue. Lily settled back into her corner spot, opening her sketchbook to show Sarah the drawing she'd been working on. It depicted three figures, Ryan, Lily, and Eleanor, standing together under a rainbow. The detail was remarkable for a 7-year-old, with special attention given to Eleanor's silver locket. Sarah crouched beside Lily, her voice warm with genuine interest. "That's beautiful. You're very talented." Lily beamed at the praise. "I'm drawing the future. See, Daddy's smiling and the pretty lady isn't sad anymore." Sarah studied the drawing with newfound appreciation, noticing how Lily had captured something essential about Eleanor, not just her appearance, but a quality few people ever glimpsed behind her professional facade. "You see things others miss, don't you?" Lily nodded, accepting this assessment as simple fact. "My teacher says I have an old soul. I don't know what that means, but Daddy says I have good instincts about people." Sarah glanced toward Ryan, who was focused on the control panel readings. "Is your dad always this brave? Standing up to people like that?" Lily considered the question with surprising gravity for a child her age. "Daddy doesn't think he's brave. He thinks he's just doing what anybody would do. But most people don't." The profound observation hung in the air between them. Sarah squeezed Lily's shoulder gently before standing. "I should get back to the dinner. It was very nice meeting you, Lily Hayes." As Sarah left, Ryan completed his system check and joined his daughter. The repairs were holding, but he'd need to return in the morning to implement a more permanent solution. The prospect of encountering Eleanor Richards again sent a complicated mix of emotions through him: curiosity, apprehension, and something he couldn't quite name. Back in the main dining room, Eleanor had regained her composure and resumed her role as host. The shock of discovering Ryan's identity had been compartmentalized with the efficiency that had made her such a formidable CEO. But beneath the polished exterior, her mind raced with implications and possibilities. The business negotiations proceeded with the expected formality, yet Eleanor found herself viewing the proceedings through a new lens. The investors, with their polished accents and casual cruelties, seemed smaller, somehow less significant than they had appeared hours ago. Marcus Blackwell's empty chair stood as a silent reminder of how quickly perceived power could shift. Eleanor guided the conversation with practiced skill, but her attention repeatedly drifted to the silver locket against her skin. For 15 years, she'd worn it as a talisman, a connection to her father, and a promise to find the man who'd save them. Now that she'd fulfilled that promise, what did it mean? What came next? As the dinner concluded with handshakes and signatures, Eleanor maintained her professional smile. The deal was secured better terms than she'd initially hoped for, ironically, thanks to Marcus Blackwell's hasty departure. His remaining partners, eager to distance themselves from his behavior, had proven surprisingly accommodating. Sarah approached as the last guest departed, her composure restored, despite the lingering wine stain on her dress. "Mr. Hayes and his daughter are still in the mechanical room. He says the system is stable for tonight, but will need further work tomorrow." Eleanor nodded, suddenly uncertain. The confident CEO who could close multi-billion-dollar deals found herself hesitating over a simple social interaction. Should she invite him to stay longer? Offer a ride home? The normal rules of engagement seemed inadequate for their unique situation. Ask them to wait if they can. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Hayes again." Sarah moved toward the service corridor, leaving Eleanor alone with her thoughts. She touched the locket again, opening it to study the tiny photograph inside. Herself and her father, both bandaged but alive, taken days after the accident. Jackson Richards had been 52 then, at the height of his powers, building an empire that would transform global communication. He'd lived another decade, enough time to secure his legacy, but not enough to find the man he'd searched for so diligently. "What would you do now? What comes after fulfilling a 15-year promise?" Sarah returned, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Hayes says he needs to get his daughter home. It's a school night, but he'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 to complete the repairs." Disappointment flashed across Eleanor's features before she masked it. "Of course. It's late for a child. Did he say anything else?" "Just that the system should hold through the night, but the restaurant needs to schedule a complete overhaul within the month." Sarah hesitated, then continued. "He seems like a good father. The way he looks at his daughter, it's how people should love each other." The observation, so simple yet profound, caught Eleanor off guard. In her world of strategic partnerships and calculated advantages, such uncomplicated devotion was rare. She'd witnessed it once in her own father's eyes, but had almost forgotten how it looked. Thank you, Sarah. You should go home too. It's been a challenging evening. Left alone in the now empty restaurant, Eleanor walked slowly through the space that had witnessed such dramatic revelations hours earlier. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic patterns across empty place settings. The evening's success, a $3 billion deal secured, felt hollow compared to the discovery of Ryan Hayes. She paused by the chair where Lily had stood so fearlessly defending Sarah. The child's question echoed in her mind, "Is that why you wear the necklace, so you could find Daddy someday?" The simplicity of a child's perspective cutting through years of complex emotion. Eleanor had indeed found Ryan Hayes fulfilling her promise to her father, but now what the locket's purpose was complete, yet removing it seemed unthinkable. Eleanor left through the main entrance where her driver waited with the car door open. The night air carried the distinct chill of San Francisco evenings, and she pulled her wrap tighter around her shoulders. As the luxury sedan pulled away from the curb, she caught a glimpse of Ryan's truck departing from the service area, Lily's small silhouette visible in the passenger seat. Two vehicles heading in opposite directions, just as their lives had done for 15 years. Yet something had changed tonight. A connection reestablished, a circle beginning to close. Eleanor leaned back against the leather seat, her mind already calculating possibilities with the precision that had made her such a successful CEO. Ryan drove through the quiet streets, Lily half asleep beside him. The events of the evening played through his mind like scenes from someone else's life. The cruel laughter at the dinner table, Sarah's humiliation, Eleanor's recognition, and the revelation that had stunned the entire room. For 15 years, he'd wondered about the people he'd saved that night. He'd imagined them occasionally ordinary people leading ordinary lives, perhaps thinking of him now and then with casual gratitude. Never had he imagined that the soaking wet child he'd pulled from that sinking car would grow up to be Eleanor Richards, one of the most powerful women in the technology world. The weight of her business card pressed against his chest where he'd tucked it into his pocket. A direct line to a world entirely different from his own. Would he call? Should he? What purpose would it serve to connect their vastly different realities? Lily stirred beside him, her voice thick with approaching sleep. She's not as scary as she looks, Daddy. She's just lonely. Ryan glanced at his daughter, continually amazed by her perception. What makes you think she's lonely, Lil? She has lots of people around her, but no one to talk to. Not really. Like you before you had me. The observation struck uncomfortably close to home. Before Lily, after his divorce and departure from the fire department, Ryan had indeed been profoundly alone. He'd functioned and worked, survived, but true connection had been rare. His daughter had changed that, bringing purpose and joy back into his life. But Eleanor Richards, the ice queen of Silicon Valley, the woman who controlled a technology empire and closed billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, it seemed impossible that someone with so much could lack anything significant. Yet he'd seen something in her eyes when she'd recognized him, not just shock or gratitude, but a profound loneliness momentarily exposed. The perfect polished exterior had cracked, revealing the human beneath. Perhaps Lily, with her uncanny insight, had seen what others missed. The next morning arrived with insistent sunshine and the blare of Ryan's alarm at 5:30 a.m. He moved through his routine with mechanical efficiency, mind still processing the previous night's revelations. Lily was unusually quiet over breakfast, her attention focused on a new drawing in her sketchbook. "What are you working on there, Lil?" Without looking up, "I'm drawing Mrs. Richards' company building. We should visit her there." Ryan nearly choked on his coffee. "And why would we do that?" Lily finally looked up, her expression earnest. "Because she's been looking for you for a long time, Daddy, and you found each other. That's important." Ryan considered his daughter's logic. From a child's perspective, the situation did seem straightforward. Eleanor had searched for him. He had been found. What came next should be equally simple: connection. Gratitude, perhaps friendship. But adult reality was messier, complicated by class differences and life circumstances that 7-year-old Lily couldn't possibly understand. "Mrs. Patel can watch you today while I go back to the restaurant. It's just a repair job, Lily, not a social call." Lily's disappointment was visible, but she didn't argue, returning to her drawing with focused determination. Ryan recognized that particular set to her jaw. She wasn't conceding the point, merely postponing the debate. Like her mother, Lily had a stubborn streak that surfaced selectively but powerfully. Ryan dropped Lily at Mrs. Patel's apartment before heading to the Evergreen. The restaurant was quiet and the morning light staff preparing for lunch service with subdued efficiency. The manager greeted him with newfound respect. Word had clearly spread about the dramatic revelations during dinner. Ms. Richards called personally to authorize whatever repairs you deem necessary. Full system overhaul, if that's what you recommend. The manager's tone conveyed his astonishment at this blank check approach to maintenance. Ryan nodded, unpacking his tools with methodical precision. He moved through the restaurant toward the mechanical room, aware of the staff watching him with undisguised curiosity. Yesterday's invisible maintenance worker had become a person of interest overnight. The system inspection confirmed his suspicions. The temporary fix had held through the night, but the underlying issues required comprehensive attention. Ryan documented his findings meticulously, preparing the detailed proposal that would normally face scrutiny and resistance. Today, apparently, it would receive automatic approval. As he worked, Ryan's thoughts returned to Eleanor Richards. The woman had spent 15 years searching for him, carrying a locket as a reminder of a promise to her father. What did she expect now that she'd found him? A thank you dinner? Some public recognition? Or something deeper? A connection between two lives that had intersected so dramatically and then diverged for so long. Across the city, Eleanor sat in her office, unable to focus on the morning's tasks. The successful business deal. What should have been a career-defining triumph barely registered against the emotional impact of finding Ryan Hayes. Her assistant had already fielded calls from 3 business publications requesting interviews about the dramatic scene at the Evergreen. The story was spreading through San Francisco's elite circles with the speed of valuable gossip. Eleanor had authorized the complete HVAC overhaul without hesitation, not from technical necessity, but as the smallest beginning of a debt she could never fully repay. She had taken 3 calls with international partners, approved a product development proposal, and signed off on quarterly projections, all while checking her phone repeatedly for a call that hadn't come. Would he use the card she'd given him? Or would Ryan Hayes drift back into anonymity, their paths crossing briefly before separating again? Sarah entered with the morning's correspondence, her composure fully restored. The market is responding positively to last night's partnership announcement. Our stock is up 3 points. Eleanor nodded absently, her attention on the document before her without really seeing it. The professional triumph felt hollow compared to the emotional revelation hours earlier. She'd fulfilled her promise to her father, found the man they'd searched for, and now what? The next steps weren't outlined in any business strategy she'd ever studied. Has Mr. Hayes submitted his assessment of the restaurant's HVAC system? Sarah placed a folder on the desk. Just arrived by email. He's recommending a complete system overhaul as expected. The cost estimate is attached. Eleanor opened the folder, scanning the detailed proposal. Ryan's assessment was thorough, professional, and clearly articulated in technical language that demonstrated expertise without showmanship. The cost was significant but reasonable for the work described. A notification appeared on Eleanor's computer screen, a message from the investigative team she'd hired years ago to search for Ryan Hayes. They'd continued running automated searches even after her father's death, a background process she'd never discontinued despite the diminishing likelihood of success. The message was automatically generated, alerting her to a possible match based on location data and name recognition. Eleanor almost laughed at the timing. After 15 years of fruitless searching, the system had finally identified the man who'd been standing right in front of her. Technology had its limitations after all. She closed the notification and returned to Ryan's proposal, studying it with unwarranted intensity. The document revealed more about the man than perhaps he realized: attention to detail, concern for safety over expedience, honest assessment without inflation. In Eleanor's world of strategic exaggeration and calculated presentations, such straightforward professionalism was refreshing. Sarah cleared her throat softly. Ms. Richards, your 11 o'clock appointment has arrived. The new marketing director, Eleanor, closed the folder with reluctance. The day's obligations pulled her back into her role as CEO, meetings, decisions, the constant forward motion of business that allowed no time for personal reflection. Yet her thoughts repeatedly drifted to the mechanical room at the Evergreen, where Ryan Hayes was likely working with the same focused dedication he'd shown in everything she'd observed about him. Back at the restaurant, Ryan had completed his assessment and begun the first phase of repairs. The work was complex but satisfying, tangible problems with concrete solutions. unlike the complicated emotions stirred by finding Eleanor Richards after 15 years of wondering. The restaurant manager appeared at the mechanical room door, his expression uncomfortable. "There's a call for you at the front desk, Mr. Hayes. Your daughter's school." His heart rate immediately accelerated, the familiar surge of parental anxiety washing through him. He followed the manager to the front desk, where the hostess handed him a phone with sympathy in her eyes. "Mr. Hayes, this is Principal Warner from Westlake Elementary. Lily became ill during morning recess. Mrs. Patel brought her to school, but she needs to be picked up. Nothing serious, just a low-grade fever, but school policy requires I'll be there in 20 minutes. Ryan's voice was calm, but his mind raced with logistics. He still had hours of work to complete at the restaurant, the beginning of a major system overhaul that couldn't be easily paused. The manager, overhearing Ryan's predicament, stepped forward with unexpected consideration. "Family comes first, Mr. Hayes. We can reschedule the remainder of the work for tomorrow." Ryan nodded gratefully, gathering his tools with efficient haste. The parental emergency was familiar territory. Lily rarely fell ill, but when she did, his entire world reconfigured around her needs. Single parenthood meant no backup, no partner to share the load. Every crisis, large or small, fell solely on his shoulders. He drove to Westlake Elementary Mine, toggling between concern for Lily and the interrupted work at the Evergreen. Missing a day meant delayed income, which rippled through their tight budget with predictable consequences. Bills would need shuffling, grocery choices would become even more strategic, and the new winter coat Lily needed might have to wait another pay cycle. The school nurse met him at the front office, Lily already bundled in her light jacket with her backpack beside her. Her normally vibrant face was flushed eyes, slightly glassy with fever. "Daddy, I don't feel good." Her small voice triggered Ryan's protective instinct with visceral force. He crouched to her level, pressing his palm to her forehead with practiced assessment. "You're pretty warm, kiddo. Let's get you home and comfortable." The nurse provided the standard instructions for childhood fever fluids. Rest over-the-counter medication if the temperature climbed above 101. Ryan listened with the focus of a parent who had no safety net, mentally cataloging the children's medicine they had at home and calculating when he could reschedule the Evergreen job. As they drove home, Lily dozed against the passenger window, her usual chatter silenced by illness. Ryan called his boss at Kendall Services, explaining the situation and rescheduling the Evergreen completion for the following day. His boss was understanding, but concerned about the timeline. The restaurant needed full functionality by evening service. Eleanor's meeting with the new marketing director dragged on, the young man's presentation filled with buzzwords and minimal substance. She maintained her attentive expression through years of practice, but her mind repeatedly drifted to the unfinished conversation with Ryan Hayes. Her phone vibrated with a text from Sarah. "Evergreen manager called. Hayes left suddenly. Family emergency. Work incomplete." Concern flashed through Eleanor, surprising her with its intensity. What kind of emergency? Was it serious? The questions formed unbidden, a personal reaction where she would normally have focused solely on the business implications. She turned her attention back to the marketing presentation with effort, but the silver locket felt unusually heavy against her skin. For 15 years, it had represented an unfulfilled promise. Now it carried a different weight, connection to a man whose life had touched hers profoundly, yet whom she barely knew. When the meeting finally concluded, Eleanor found herself making an impulsive decision. She called Sarah into her office, her mind already formulating a plan with the efficiency that had made her such a successful executive. "I need you to find out what happened with Mr. Hayes today. Why he left the Evergreen, what kind of emergency?" Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded without comment. She'd worked for Eleanor long enough to recognize the unusual personal investment behind the request. Within 15 minutes, she returned with the information. His daughter became ill at school. He had to pick her up. The Evergreen manager says he's rescheduled for tomorrow morning. Eleanor absorbed this feeling, a strange sense of connection to the child who had stunned everyone with her perceptive drawings and fearless defense of her father. She made another decision, this one even more out of character for the normally reserved CEO. Cancel my afternoon appointments and have the car brought around. Sarah's surprise was visible, but she complied without question, recognizing the determined set of Eleanor's jaw. Within 30 minutes, Eleanor Richards, who rarely left her office before 8 p.m., was sitting in the back of her luxury sedan, directing her driver to an address in a modest neighborhood across the city. Ryan had settled Lily on the living room couch with her favorite blanket, a glass of water, and children's fever reducer measured with careful precision. Her temperature wasn't dangerously high, but enough to make her uncomfortable and lethargic. He sat beside her reading from her favorite book while she dozed intermittently, one small hand holding tightly to his, even in sleep. The knock at the apartment door was so unexpected that Ryan initially thought he'd imagined it. They rarely received visitors and never unannounced. He gently extracted his hand from Lily's grip and moved to the door, peering through the peephole with reflexive caution. The sight of Eleanor Richards standing in his hallway struck him as so improbable that he blinked twice before accepting the evidence before him. He opened the door momentarily speechless at the incongruity of the powerful CEO in her tailored black suit standing outside his modest apartment. Eleanor's confidence faltered slightly under his surprised scrutiny. "I heard about your daughter. Is she all right?" The simple question, delivered with genuine concern rather than the polished professionalism he'd observed at the restaurant, caught Ryan off guard. He stepped back, opening the door wider in wordless invitation. Eleanor entered, taking in the apartment with a quick, observant glance. The space was small but immaculate, furnished simply but with evident care. Children's artwork. Lily's distinctive style adorned the refrigerator and one wall. Books filled a small bookshelf, most well-worn from repeated reading. Nothing about the apartment suggested poverty, but everything spoke of careful budgeting and prioritization. Lily's on the couch, just a fever, nothing serious. Eleanor followed Ryan to the living room, where Lily lay curled under a colorful quilt, her flushed face peaceful in sleep. The scene struck Eleanor with unexpected poignancy, this small family unit, father and daughter, facing life's challenges together with evident love and resilience. She shouldn't have come. The realization hit Eleanor suddenly. This was an intrusion, an overstepping of boundaries. What had seemed like concerned outreach from her office now felt presumptuous in the intimate setting of their home. She'd spent 15 years searching for Ryan Hayes, but that didn't give her the right to insert herself into his life without invitation. "I apologize for coming unannounced. I was concerned when I heard you'd left the Evergreens suddenly." Ryan studied her with that direct gaze that seemed to see past her carefully constructed exterior. "Why are you really here, Ms. Richards?" The blunt question cut through pretense with surgical precision. Eleanor found herself answering with uncharacteristic honesty. "Because for 15 years I've wondered about you. Because my father's last request was that I find you and thank you properly. Because yesterday you appeared in my life like something from a dream, and today you disappeared again with a family emergency. And She stopped, realizing how unlike herself she sounded, uncertain, emotional without the measured control that defined her professional persona. Ryan's expression remained unreadable, but something in his posture softened slightly. Lily stirred on the couch, her eyes fluttering open. Through the fever haze, she recognized their visitor immediately, a smile spreading across her flushed face. "You came, I knew you would." Eleanor moved to the couch, momentarily forgetting her awkwardness in the face of the child's evident delight. "How are you feeling, Lily Hot?" "And my head hurts. But I'm drawing you a new picture." "Want to see?" Lily reached for her sketchbook on the coffee table. Ryan handed it to her, his expression a complex mixture of protectiveness and curiosity. Eleanor sat carefully on the edge of the couch, accepting the open sketchbook with gentle hands. The drawing showed the same three figures from before Ryan, Lily, and Eleanor, but this time they stood in front of what appeared to be the Richards Enterprises building, rendered with surprising accuracy for a child. Above them, written in careful letters, "Our new family." Eleanor stared at the drawing, emotion tightening her throat. The child's simple vision of connection struck her with unexpected force. In Lily's world, the complex barriers of class, circumstance, and 15 years of separate lives didn't exist, only the possibility of new bonds formed from an old promise. Ryan leaned over to see the drawing, his expression changing as he registered its implication. "Lily, Ms. Richards is very busy with her company. She can't—" "It's beautiful, Lily," Eleanor interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "You're very talented." Lily beamed, despite her fever, snuggling back against her pillow with evident satisfaction. "I told Daddy we should visit you at your building, but he said it was just a repair job, not a social call." The frank repetition of Ryan's words brought a flush to his cheeks. Eleanor glanced at him, a hint of amusement in her eyes, despite the awkwardness of the situation. "Your father is very practical. That's a good quality. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Lily, why don't you rest while I talk with Mrs. Richards in the kitchen? Eleanor followed him to the small kitchen separated from the living room by a half wall that allowed Ryan to keep Lily in his sightline. He busied himself filling the electric kettle, the mundane task seeming to ground him in the surreal circumstance of having Eleanor Richards standing in his kitchen. Tea, coffee, it's nothing fancy, just grocery store brands. Eleanor accepted his offered distraction. Tea would be lovely, thank you. Ryan prepared 2 mugs with methodical movements, his back to Eleanor as he spoke. I appreciate you checking on Lily, but you didn't need to come all this way. She'll be fine by tomorrow and I'll complete the evergreen repairs then. Eleanor leaned against the counter watching him work. The small everyday motions of preparing tea revealed more about Ryan Hayes than perhaps he realized: careful efficiency, no wasted movement, complete attention to the task at hand. The same qualities she'd observed in his HVAC proposal. This isn't about the repairs, I think you know that. Ryan turned, handing her a mug of tea prepared exactly as she preferred it, light, no sugar. The small detail caught her by surprise. How did you know Ryan's expression remained neutral? I noticed at the restaurant you had tea during your dinner meeting. Light, steep, no additions. The observation, so specific yet delivered so casually, revealed an attentiveness Eleanor rarely encountered. In her world, people studied her preferences as strategy, ammunition for future advantage. Ryan had simply noticed, filed away the information without agenda. She took a sip of the perfectly prepared tea, gathering her thoughts. For 15 years, I've carried my father's last request to find you, to thank you, to repay an unpayable debt. Now I've found you, and I don't know what comes next. Ryan leaned against the opposite counter, his own mug cradled in calloused hands. What did you imagine would happen when you found me? The question caught Eleanor off guard. She'd spent so many years focused on the search itself that the outcome had remained abstract, a hypothetical future event, rather than a concrete reality requiring action. I'm not sure. Recognition, certainly. Financial compensation, perhaps, though I always knew that would be complicated by pride. My father imagined offering you a position at the company, creating some role that would elevate your circumstances without feeling like charity. Ryan's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. And what do you imagine now that you've actually found me? Now that I'm a real person with a real life, not just some heroic figure from your past? Eleanor set her mug down, the directness of his question demanding equal honesty in return. I don't know, that's why I'm here. Not to offer money or jobs or anything that might offend your pride. Just to understand, to see if there's a way forward that honors what happened without diminishing either of us. The vulnerability in her voice, so different from the controlled CEO persona she presented to the world, shifted something in Ryan's expression. He studied her with that direct gaze that seemed to see past surfaces to essential truths. I've got a good life, Ms. Richards. Not wealthy, not fancy, but good. I do honest work that helps people. I'm raising a daughter who amazes me every day. I don't need rescuing or elevating. Eleanor nodded, accepting this boundary without argument. And I'm not offering rescue, just connection, perhaps. My father searched for you until the day he died. Finding you was the last thing he asked of me. Now that I have it, feels wrong to simply exchange pleasantries and go our separate ways. Ryan's gaze shifted to the living room where Lily had fallen asleep again, her sketchbook still clutched in one small hand. The drawing visible from where they stood, our new family, in a child's careful script. She sees things the rest of us miss. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. Always has. Her mother couldn't handle it, the intensity, the perception. She left when Lily was 2, said she needed someone who didn't look right through her. The personal disclosure surprised them both. Ryan rarely spoke of his ex-wife, and never to virtual strangers. Yet something about Eleanor Richards invited confidence, perhaps because she'd already seen him at his most vulnerable, unconscious, in a hospital bed 15 years ago. Eleanor accepted the offering for what it was, a small opening, a tentative step toward the connection she'd sought. Your daughter is remarkable. She saw something in me that most people miss. Most days I forget it's there myself. The admission hovered between them, 2 people accustomed to strength finding unexpected common ground and vulnerability. From the living room came the sound of Lily stirring, breaking the moment with perfect timing. She needs more medicine. Ryan moved toward the living room, back to the solid ground of parental responsibility. Eleanor followed, watching as he tenderly measured liquid medication and helped Lily sit up to take it. The child's fever-bright eyes found Eleanor, a smile spreading across her flushed face despite her discomfort. "Did you like my drawing? Are we going to be a family now?" The direct question hung in the air, innocent yet profound in its implications. Ryan froze the medicine cup still in his hand. Eleanor felt the weight of the moment at the child's hopeful question cutting through social niceties to the heart of human connection. Some questions don't have simple answers. "Lily," Eleanor spoke gently, moving to sit beside the child, "but I'm very glad I found your father after looking for so long. And I'd like to know both of you better if that's all right." She glanced at Ryan, seeking confirmation that she hadn't overstepped. His expression remained guarded, but he didn't contradict her. Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense, accepting the medication from her father without complaint. "When I'm better, can we visit your building, the one I drew?" Eleanor smiled, charmed despite herself by the child's persistence. "Yes, I'd like that, when you're feeling better." Ryan helped Lily lie back down, tucking the blanket around her with practiced care. "You should rest now, princess. The medicine will help with the fever." As Lily drifted back to sleep, Ryan and Eleanor returned to the kitchen, their conversation now altered by the child's innocent question. The awkwardness between them had shifted, neither fully comfortable but no longer entirely strangers. Eleanor glanced at her watch, reality intruding on the strangely intimate moment. "I should go. You both need rest, and I've imposed enough." Ryan walked her to the door, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for checking on Lily. It was unexpected." Eleanor paused in the doorway, struck by the inadequacy of conventional farewell. 15 years of searching culminating in this quiet moment in a modest apartment. What came next would require navigation of unfamiliar territory for both of them, genuine connection beyond obligation or gratitude. "I meant what I said to Lily. I'd like to know you both better. Not out of obligation or guilt or any agenda, just because." The simple statement hung between them, offering possibility without pressure. Ryan studied her with that direct gaze that seemed to evaluate truth at its foundation. "We'll see how Lily feels tomorrow. If she's better, maybe we will visit that building of yours." It wasn't a commitment, but it was an opening more than Eleanor had realistically expected. She nodded, accepting the tentative invitation with more gratitude than the casual words warranted. As she walked back to her waiting car, Eleanor touched the silver locket at her throat, the talisman that had guided her search for 15 years. Its purpose fulfilled, yet its weight against her skin felt different now. Not a reminder of an unfulfilled promise, but a connection to a future not yet written. In the apartment, Ryan returned to Lily's side, checking her fever with the back of his hand. She stirred slightly at his touch, her eyes opening just enough to focus on his face. "Is she gone?" Ryan nodded, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. She had to get back to work. Important CEO stuff. Lily's smile was knowing despite her fever. "She'll be back. I saw it in my drawing." Ryan didn't contradict her, though the practical part of him doubted Eleanor Richards would return to their modest world after satisfying her curiosity. The distance between their lives was measured in more than miles, different worlds, different realities. Yet as he sat beside his sleeping daughter, Ryan found his hand moving to the pocket where he kept the leather notebook with Jackson Richards' signature. For 15 years, he'd carried this tangible connection to a night that had changed multiple lives. Perhaps Lily was right. Perhaps some connections once made never truly broke, only stretched across time and circumstance, waiting to be recognized again. Morning sunlight streamed through the apartment windows, casting warm patterns across the worn hardwood floor. The day after Lily's fever had broken, Ryan stood in the kitchen preparing Lily's favorite breakfast, cinnamon toast with apple slices arranged in a smile. Her fever had broken during the night, her color returning to normal after 12 hours of medication and rest. The crisis had passed, as childhood illnesses often did, leaving behind only the lingering disruption to their routine. Lily emerged from her bedroom, hair tousled, but eyes clear. No sign of yesterday's fever remained, except a slight pallor that would fade by afternoon. She climbed onto her usual stool at the counter, immediately reaching for her sketchbook. "Do I have to go to school today?" Ryan placed the plate in front of her, studying her face with a father's practiced assessment. "You seem better, but we should probably take it easy today. How about you come with me to finish the job at the Evergreen? Then we head home for a quiet afternoon." Lily's expression brightened immediately, exactly as Ryan had expected. His daughter had never shown interest in typical sick day activities. Television and rest held no appeal compared to the possibility of adventure. Can we visit Ms. Richards after at her big building? She said we could when I felt better, and I feel better now. Ryan hesitated, torn between honoring the tentative connection formed yesterday and protecting his daughter from inevitable disappointment. Eleanor Richards had visited during a moment of unusual circumstance, finding the man she'd searched for witnessing his daughter's illness. The gesture, while kind, didn't necessarily indicate ongoing interest in their lives. "We'll see, Lil. Ms. Richards is very busy running her company. She might not have time for visitors today." Lily accepted this with surprising equanimity, focusing on her breakfast with unusual concentration. Ryan recognized the signs his daughter wasn't conceding the point, merely developing a new strategy. Like chess pieces being repositioned, Lily was planning her next move in the campaign to connect their small family unit with the wealthy CEO who had briefly entered their world. An hour later, they arrived at the Evergreen restaurant. The morning staff greeted Ryan with newfound respect. Word of his connection to Eleanor Richards had clearly circulated. The manager approached immediately, his demeanor transformed from yesterday's condescension to today's eager accommodation. "Mr. Hayes, we've cleared access to all areas you might need. Take as much time as necessary for a complete repair. Ms. Richards personally authorized the full system overhaul you recommended." Ryan nodded without comment, setting Lily up in her usual corner of the mechanical room before beginning work. The HVAC system required focused attention. The temporary fix had held through the night, but the underlying issues demanded comprehensive repair. He lost himself in the familiar precision of the work, the concrete problems with definable solutions so different from the ambiguous, emotional territory he'd navigated yesterday with Eleanor Richards. Lily worked quietly in her corner, alternating between drawing in her sketchbook and reading from the small collection of books Ryan always packed in her backpack. Occasionally, she asked questions about the mechanical system, absorbing Ryan's explanations with genuine interest. Her fever had left no trace except a slightly subdued energy level, which actually made the work site arrangement easier than usual. By noon, Ryan had completed the critical repairs. The system would hold through the evening service, though the full overhaul would require scheduling a team for more extensive work. He packed his tools while Lily carefully put away her supplies, her movements deliberate as she secured her colored pencils in the case Mrs. Patel had given her, recovered yesterday from where she'd left it in the restaurant. They walked through the kitchen toward the exit, Ryan nodding acknowledgments to staff who now recognized him. The restaurant manager intercepted them at the service door, his expression oddly hesitant. "Mr. Hayes, there's a call for you at the front desk, from Richards Enterprises." Ryan's stride faltered, surprise rippling through him. He glanced down at Lily, who looked up with undisguised triumph, as if she'd orchestrated this development herself. Perhaps she had in ways neither adult had fully appreciated. Her drawings, her directness, her absolute confidence in connections others couldn't yet see. At the host station, the phone receiver waited. Ryan picked it up, his voice neutral, despite the curiosity coursing through him. "Hayes here." Sarah Williams's voice came through with professional clarity. "Mr. Hayes, Eleanor Richards asked me to contact you. She wondered if you and your daughter might be available to visit Richards Enterprises this afternoon. Around 2 o'clock, if that's convenient." Ryan glanced at his watch, just after 12. The invitation wasn't entirely unexpected after yesterday's conversation, yet hearing it formalized through an executive assistant made the situation suddenly startlingly real. Eleanor Richards, CEO of a global technology empire, was officially requesting their presence. "We can do that." Lily seemed to register his acceptance before he'd even completed the sentence, her face lighting with satisfaction. Sarah provided details: where to park, which entrance to use, security protocols that would be modified to accommodate their visit. The carefully orchestrated welcome of very important persons to the inner sanctum of power. Ryan listened with growing unease, wondering what exactly he was walking into. Yesterday's vulnerable conversation in his modest kitchen seemed worlds away from the corporate formality being arranged. As they left the restaurant, Lily practically vibrated with excitement. She'd heard only Ryan's side of the call, but had correctly interpreted its meaning with her usual perception. "We're going to see Ms. Richards at her big building. Just like in my drawing," Ryan helped her into the truck, mind racing with practicalities. They'd need to stop at home first. Lily should change from yesterday's rumpled clothes, and he'd need to swap his work uniform for something more appropriate for a corporate headquarters visit. Not that he owned anything particularly impressive, but at least he could remove the evidence of crawling through mechanical spaces all morning. The drive home was accompanied by Lily's steady stream of questions and observations about Eleanor Richards, her building her company, her silver locket. Ryan answered what he could, conscious of managing expectations without dampening his daughter's enthusiasm. The child had formed an attachment to Eleanor with startling speed. Something about the wealthy CEO had resonated with Lily in ways Ryan couldn't fully understand. At home, they moved with efficient purpose. Ryan showered quickly, changing into a single pair of khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt reserved for parent-teacher conferences and similar occasions. It wasn't corporate attire, but it was clean, respectable, and the best he had available. Lily changed into her favorite dress, purple with yellow flowers saved for special occasions, and allowed Ryan to brush her hair without the usual protests. As Ryan knotted his only tie, he caught sight of their reflection in the bathroom mirror. Father and daughter, cleaned up but unmistakably ordinary, preparing to enter a world of wealth and power far removed from their daily existence. What was he doing? What possible good could come from this collision of realities? Yet underneath the practical concerns ran a current of curiosity he couldn't deny. Eleanor Richards had searched for him for 15 years. Finding him had meant something to her beyond the satisfaction of a promise fulfilled. Yesterday's visit to their apartment had revealed glimpses of a woman far more complex than the Ice Queen CEO portrayed in business magazines. Something about their connection mattered to her, and Ryan couldn't pretend indifference to discovering why. The drive to Richards Enterprises took them through San Francisco's financial district, the gleaming tower rising like a silver spear against the blue sky. Ryan had seen the building countless times, but never imagined entering it, particularly not as invited guests of the CEO. He parked in the visitor's garage as instructed, helping Lily from the truck with a quiet reminder about appropriate behavior. Best manners today, Lil. This is a place where very important people do very important work. Lily nodded solemnly, straightening her dress with unusual care. I know, Daddy. We're visiting a queen in her castle. The childish comparison wasn't entirely inaccurate. As they approached the main entrance, the building's grandeur became more apparent. 48 stories of architectural innovation, the Richards Enterprises logo illuminated above massive glass doors that opened automatically as they approached. The lobby stretched before them in gleaming marble and brushed steel, a security desk positioned centrally like the gateway to another world. Ryan approached with Lily's hand firmly in his, conscious of how out of place they must appear, despite their best clothes. Before he could speak, the security officer looked up with immediate recognition. Mr. Hayes and Miss Hayes, we've been expecting you. Sarah Williams will meet you at the executive elevator. They were issued visitor badges without the usual security protocols, then directed toward a bank of elevators separate from those used by regular employees and visitors. As promised, Sarah waited beside an elevator marked with a discreet executive placard, her professional demeanor softened by a genuine smile when she spotted Lily. It's wonderful to see you feeling better, Lily. Ms. Richards is looking forward to your visit. The executive elevator moved with silent efficiency, rising 42 floors without stopping. Lily pressed her face against the glass wall, watching the city fall away beneath them with undisguised wonder. Ryan maintained a calm exterior, but his pulse quickened as the numbers climbed. What exactly awaited them in Eleanor Richards' executive suite? What did she expect from this visit, and what did he hope to gain from it? The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area, more reminiscent of an art gallery than an office. Minimalist furniture and brushed steel and white leather created conversation areas between large-scale abstract paintings. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay, the Golden Gate Bridge visible in the distance like a red thread stitching land to land. Sarah led them through the reception area toward a set of double doors at the far end. Before she could open them, the doors swung inward, revealing Eleanor Richards in a simple yet clearly expensive black dress, the silver locket gleaming at her throat. Her professional mask was firmly in place, but something in her eyes softened at the sight of Lily. Welcome to Richards Enterprises. Thank you for coming. The formal greeting seemed to amuse Lily, who stepped forward with complete confidence, as if visiting corporate headquarters were a regular occurrence in her 7-year-old life. Your building is even better than I drew it. Can I see your office? Does it have a special chair that spins? Eleanor's composed expression cracked a genuine smile, warming her features. She crouched to Lily's level, a gesture so at odds with her CEO persona that Sarah blinked in surprise. It does have a spinning chair, and a view of the entire city. Would you like to try it? Lily nodded enthusiastically, already moving toward the open office doors. Eleanor rose, meeting Ryan's gaze with a hint of uncertainty beneath her professional veneer. I'm glad she's feeling better. Children are remarkably resilient. The observation held more personal insight than Ryan had expected, revealing yet another facet of this complex woman. He followed as Eleanor led them into her private office, a space that perfectly balanced power and taste, expansive desk, comfortable seating area, and those same breathtaking views visible through windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. Lily headed straight for the executive chair, climbing into it with delighted determination. Eleanor made no move to stop her, merely watching with that same softened expression as the child discovered the chair's adjustable features. Ryan remained near the door, suddenly conscious of his worn shoes against the pristine carpet, his clean but clearly budget-friendly clothes in this temple of wealth and influence. Eleanor seemed to sense his discomfort, gesturing toward the seating area with natural hospitality. Please sit. Would you like coffee, tea? Sarah can bring anything you'd like. Ryan shook his head, moving toward the indicated chairs but not yet sitting. I appreciate the invitation, Ms. Richards, but I'm still not clear on why we're here. The blunt question hung between them, cutting through social niceties to the heart of the matter. Eleanor's professional mask slipped again, revealing a flash of the vulnerability he glimpsed in his kitchen yesterday. She glanced at Lily, still happily spinning in the executive chair, then back to Ryan. After you left the restaurant that first night, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Finding you after 15 years, discovering your daughter, seeing how you live, it changed something for me. Shifted my perspective in ways I'm still processing. Ryan remained silent, waiting for her to continue. Eleanor moved to the window, gazing out at the city spread below them like a living map. When my father died, I inherited everything: the company, the wealth, the responsibility. I was 22, barely out of college, suddenly in charge of thousands of employees and billions in assets. Everyone told me I couldn't do it, that I was too young, too inexperienced. The only person who believed in me was gone. She touched the silver locket, a gesture Ryan now recognized as her emotional anchor. So I became what I thought I needed to be: controlled, precise, never showing weakness or uncertainty. Eleanor Richards, Ice Queen CEO. I was respected, feared even, but never known. Not really. The admission carried surprising weight in the pristine office. Ryan glanced at Lily, still absorbed in exploring Eleanor's workspace, then moved to stand beside Eleanor at the window. Close enough for private conversation, far enough to maintain appropriate boundaries. Why are you telling me this? Eleanor turned from the view, meeting his gaze directly. Because your daughter saw through all of it in 5 seconds flat. She sat inside, she said, looking at my photograph. A child who'd never met me somehow recognized what I've spent years hiding from everyone, including myself. Ryan nodded, unsurprised by this assessment of his daughter's perceptive abilities. Lily sees things the rest of us miss, always has, but that doesn't explain why we're standing in your office right now. Eleanor smiled slightly, recognizing his refusal to be deflected. Direct and practical qualities she clearly respected. I've spent 15 years searching for the man who saved my life. Now I've found you, and you're not at all what I expected. You're not seeking recognition or reward. You're just living your life, raising an extraordinary daughter, doing honest work. It makes me wonder if I've been pursuing the wrong things all these years. The admission hung between them, unexpectedly personal. Ryan studied her with that direct gaze that seemed to see past surfaces to essential truths. We all make the best choices we can with what we have. You built an empire. I rebuilt my life after losing a career I loved. Different paths, different outcomes. Eleanor nodded, accepting his perspective without argument. But when I saw you stand up for Sarah at that dinner, the same quiet courage you showed pulling us from that car 15 years ago, I recognized something I've been missing. Authenticity, maybe. The courage to be exactly who you are, regardless of expectations. From across the room, Lily's voice interrupted their conversation. Ms. Richards, why do you have this picture? They turned to find Lily standing before a discreetly positioned photograph on a side table, the only personal item in the otherwise impersonal office. It showed Jackson Richards in his prime, silver-haired and distinguished, in an expensive suit, standing before the Richards Enterprises logo at some corporate event. Eleanor crossed to Lily, her expression softening as she gazed at the photograph. That's my father, Jackson Richards. He started this company from nothing, built it into what you see today. He was everything to me. Lily studied the photograph with unusual intensity, then looked up at Eleanor with absolute certainty. He's happy that you found my daddy. He's been waiting a long time. The simple statement delivered with a child's straightforward conviction landed like a physical force. Eleanor's composure cracked completely, her hand flying to the silver locket as if anchoring herself against sudden emotion. Ryan moved to Lily's side, equal parts protective and curious. Lily, how would you know that? Lily shrugged, the gesture encompassing all the mysteries adults fail to understand. I just do. Like I knew the lady in the picture at the restaurant was sad even though she was smiling. Some things you just know inside. Eleanor knelt before Lily, eye to eye with the child whose perception had pierced her carefully constructed facade. How do you see things the rest of us miss? Lily considered this seriously, head tilted in thought. Grandma always said some people have special eyes that see past the outside to the inside. She said I got those eyes from her and that they're a gift and a responsibility. Ryan watched the exchange with growing awareness of its significance. His mother had indeed always claimed a special perception in their family line, an intuition bordering on the uncanny. He'd attributed it to the heightened observation skills common in their Native American heritage, never giving it mystical significance. Yet Lily's abilities continually defied rational explanation. My grandmother called it the knowing, Ryan explained quietly. She said certain people in our family line could see connections others missed, past, present, sometimes even glimpses of what might be. I always thought it was just exceptional emotional intelligence until Lily started knowing things she couldn't possibly know. Eleanor rose slowly, her gaze moving from Lily to Ryan with new understanding. Your daughter is extraordinary, not just her artistic talent or her perception, but her certainty. She sees connections that the rest of us miss. Ryan nodded, pride mingling with his perpetual protectiveness. She's special. Always has been. It's why I work so hard to give her a stable life, to protect her from people who might not understand or might try to exploit her gifts. The implication hung between them. Was Eleanor Richards one of those people? The billionaire CEO certainly had the power to disrupt their carefully balanced lives, to offer opportunities that came with invisible strings and unstated expectations. Eleanor seemed to read his concern with surprising accuracy. I didn't invite you here with any agenda, Ryan, not to offer jobs or money or opportunities in exchange for access to your daughter's remarkable abilities. I just wanted to understand the connection she sensed so immediately, the possibilities she drew in that picture labeled Our New Family. Across the office, Lily had returned to the executive chair, spinning slowly while examining the ceiling with fascination. The adult conversation held little interest compared to the wonders of an executive suite. Ryan maintained his direct gaze, evaluating Eleanor's sincerity. For 15 years, you carried a locket and a promise, searching for a man who saved your life. Now you've found him, along with his unusual daughter. What exactly are you hoping will happen next? The blunt question cut through remaining pretense. Eleanor's professional mask fell away completely, revealing the woman beneath, still controlled, still precise but genuine in a way few people ever witnessed. I don't know, that's the truth. For 15 years, I've focused on finding you, fulfilling my promise to my father. I never really thought about what would come after, but when I saw you with Lily, when I visited your apartment, when your daughter showed me that drawing of us as a family, it awakened something I thought I'd buried for good. Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. The possibility of genuine connection, of being known for who I really am, not just what I've achieved. The admission hung in the pristine office, surprisingly vulnerable, from a woman celebrated for her impenetrable composure. Ryan absorbed her words without immediate response, weighing their implications against his responsibility to protect his daughter and their carefully constructed life. Before he could formulate a reply, Lily's voice carried across the room. Can we have lunch together? I'm hungry, and Daddy always says food helps people talk better. The simple request broke the tension, drawing reluctant smiles from both adults. Eleanor glanced at her watch, then at her appointment calendar displayed on a sleek desktop screen. I've cleared my schedule until 4. There's a nice cafe in the building, or I could have something brought up if you prefer privacy. Ryan looked to Lily, who had abandoned the chair and now stood beside them, somehow sensing the importance of the conversation she'd interrupted. Lily, Ms. Richards is very busy running her company. We should probably, I want to have lunch with you both. Eleanor's interruption came with surprising conviction. If you're willing, that is. Nothing formal, just a meal together. A chance to talk without the weight of 15 years of history pressing down on every word. The invitation hung between them, simple yet laden with unspoken significance. Ryan studied Eleanor's expression, finding sincerity beneath the polished exterior. Whatever her motives, they didn't appear calculated or self-serving, just genuine interest in connection, however unlikely their circumstances. Lily looked between them, her perceptive gaze missing nothing. The grown-ups are being complicated again. It's simple, we all need lunch, we're all here so we should eat together. Then maybe ice cream after. The straightforward logic of a child cut through adult hesitation. Ryan found himself smiling despite his reservations. All right, lunch it is. Eleanor's relief was visible, a genuine emotion breaking through her professional facade. She called Sarah, arranging for the cafe to prepare a private table, then guided them toward the executive elevator. As the doors closed, Lily slipped her hand into Eleanor's, with natural confidence, creating a physical connection that bridged their separate worlds. The cafe occupied the building's 20th floor, offering panoramic views through walls of glass. The maitre d' greeted Eleanor with practiced deference, leading them to a secluded table already prepared for their arrival. Ryan noted the subtle signals of wealth and power staff appearing instantly, then fading discreetly away, menus without prices, the hushed deference of everyone they encountered. Lily showed no awareness of these class distinctions, happily climbing into her chair and examining the menu with serious concentration. The child moved through this rarefied world with the same straightforward confidence she brought to everything, accepting each new experience without preconception. Eleanor ordered with casual familiarity, obviously a regular patron. Ryan selected, conservatively conscious of unfamiliar cuisine and invisible social protocols. Lily requested fancy chicken nuggets with such charming determination that the server promised to have the chef prepare something special. As they waited for their food, conversation flowed with surprising ease. Eleanor asked Lily about her drawings, her school, her interests, genuine curiosity rather than polite small talk. The child responded with typical enthusiasm, sharing stories and observations that gradually painted a picture of their life together. Ryan found himself relaxing despite the unfamiliar surroundings, drawn into the exchange by his daughter's natural ability to create connection. When their food arrived, elegant presentations that somehow included perfectly crispy, fancy chicken nuggets for Lily, the conversation shifted toward more substantive territory. Eleanor described her father's company, explaining in terms Lily could understand how Richard's Enterprises had transformed global communication. Ryan listened with interest, glimpsing the passion beneath her professional veneer when she spoke about technology's potential to improve lives. As the meal progressed, Lily grew increasingly comfortable with Eleanor asking questions adults would consider too direct or personal. Rather than deflecting, Eleanor answered with surprising honesty, treating the child's curiosity with respect. Do you ever get lonely in that big office all alone? Eleanor paused, fork halfway to her mouth, visibly considering the question, rather than offering a reflexive denial. Yes, sometimes. Even when I'm surrounded by people all day, in assistants, executives, employees, I'm still separate in ways that matter. Leadership can be isolating. The admission, simple yet profound, revealed more about Eleanor Richards than dozens of business magazine profiles had managed to capture. Ryan observed the exchange with growing appreciation for Eleanor's willingness to engage with Lily on authentic terms without condescension or deflection. As dessert arrived, including the ice cream Lily had negotiated, Ryan found himself genuinely enjoying the unlikely lunch. The billionaire CEO had shed layers of her professional armor, revealing glimpses of the woman beneath, intelligent, thoughtful, and far warmer than her public persona suggested. Eleanor watched Lily attack her ice cream with childish enthusiasm, a smile softening her usually composed features. She's remarkable, your daughter. Not just her perception or artistic talent, but her confidence, her absolute certainty about connections between people. Ryan nodded, pride mingling with his perpetual protectiveness. She sees possibilities the rest of us miss, always has, even as a baby. Her mother found it unsettling, like living with someone who could read your thoughts. I just think of it as her special gift. Eleanor's expression grew thoughtful, her spoon tracing patterns in her barely touched dessert. And what about you, Ryan? What possibilities do you see between us? The direct question caught him off guard, though he should have anticipated it. Eleanor Richards hadn't built a global technology empire by avoiding difficult conversations. He considered his response carefully aware of Lily's attentive presence, despite her apparent absorption with ice cream. I see a remarkable woman who spent 15 years searching for a connection to her past. I see my daughter drawing pictures of possibilities I hadn't considered. I see worlds that don't usually intersect, somehow colliding, because of one night 15 years ago. He paused, meeting Eleanor's gaze directly. What I don't see is how this ends. What happens after lunch, after the novelty wears off, after you've satisfied your curiosity about the maintenance man who pulled you from that car? The blunt question hung between them, cutting through social niceties to the heart of their unlikely situation. Eleanor didn't flinch from the challenge, her response equally direct. I don't know, that's the honest truth. For 15 years, finding you was the goal. Now that I have, I'm discovering the real journey might just be beginning. If you're willing to explore it with me, with both of you. She glanced at Lily, who had abandoned all pretense of ignoring the adult conversation and now watched them with undisguised interest. Life's greatest possibilities often begin when we step off our carefully planned paths. My father taught me that though I've spent years pretending otherwise, the sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Ryan studied her expression, finding no trace of calculation or agenda, just genuine openness to connection, however unlikely their circumstances. Lily, having finished her ice cream, inserted herself into the conversation with characteristic directness. Can Ms. Richards come to my school play next week? I'm playing a tree, but a very important tree. The simple invitation bridged worlds more effectively than any adult negotiation. Eleanor's surprise gave way to genuine pleasure, her response directed to Lily rather than Ryan. I'd be honored to see you perform. Important trees are my favorite kind. Ryan watched the exchange with growing awareness that something significant had shifted during their lunch together. Barriers he'd expected to remain firmly in place had somehow dissolved, replaced by tentative connections that defied conventional explanation. As they prepared to leave the cafe, Eleanor's phone chimed with a reminder of her 4 o'clock meeting. Reality intruded on their temporary bubble corporate obligations, reclaiming the CEO, who had for a brief time been simply Eleanor. I need to prepare for my next meeting, but I'd like to see both of you again. Perhaps dinner later this week. Something casual. No crystal chandeliers or business partners. The invitation hung between them, simple yet laden with possibility. Ryan glanced at Lily, whose hopeful expression made his decision both easier and more complex. His responsibility was to protect his daughter, to maintain the stable life he'd carefully constructed for them. Yet that same daughter clearly saw something valuable in this unlikely connection. What about your business partners? Ryan asked. Especially that Blackwell character, I can't imagine he'd approve. Eleanor's expression hardened momentarily. Marcus Blackwell withdrew from the partnership entirely. Apparently, his reputation couldn't withstand being associated with someone who publicly humiliated an assistant. The remaining partners have been surprisingly accommodating, perhaps realizing which side of history they want to be on. Thursday night works for us, but we'll host at our place. Simple dinner, nothing fancy. Our world, not yours. The condition was clear: if this connection were to continue, it couldn't exist solely in Eleanor's rarefied environment. She would need to step into their reality as they had stepped into hers. Eleanor nodded, accepting his terms without hesitation. Thursday it is. I'll bring dessert. As they rode the executive elevator back to the lobby, Lily between them holding both their hands, Ryan felt the weight of Eleanor's business card still in his pocket, a tangible reminder of their unlikely connection. 15 years after pulling her from that sinking car, their lives had collided again through circumstance and a child's remarkable perception. Whatever came next would require navigation of unfamiliar territory, genuine connection beyond obligation or curiosity, building bridges between worlds that rarely intersected. As the elevator doors opened to the gleaming lobby, Ryan glanced at Eleanor's reflection in the polished doors, the powerful CEO momentarily replaced by a woman stepping tentatively toward genuine connection. 15 years ago, Ryan Hayes had made a choice that altered multiple lives, diving into churning water without calculation or expectation of reward. Today, he stood at another threshold, facing another choice with equally unpredictable consequences. As Lily squeezed his hand, her certainty about connections the adults were only beginning to recognize. Ryan found himself willing to dive into these unfamiliar waters, not out of obligation to the past, but openness to possibilities he hadn't imagined possible. Sometimes the most important things in life aren't written in contracts or measured in dollars. Eleanor's silver locket caught the light as they stepped into the lobby, no longer a talisman of unfulfilled promises, but a bridge to a future not yet written.